Right, so anyone who was ever, taught properly how to behave growing up must have heard the story of the boy who cried wolf. You know, the idea that this kid keeps on shouting, wolf, 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 and keeps on lying about it to get attention, and all the villagers come, they see either there's no wolf and they don't believe him, so that when an actual wolf comes, and he cries out, wolf, 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 no one believes him, and he gets eaten by the wolf. It's basically the most fundamental story to teach your kids not to tell lies or to make up stories. And so, I guess it's kind of a good idea for a popular kids' TV show like Thunderbirds to kind of adapt that for certain audiences. So we see these two boys living in the outback of Australia, and one of the kids is trapped on a ledge, and it seems quite serious. He calls for international rescue saying, "Help, I'm trapped on a ledge, I think my leg's broken," and stuff like that. And Scott comes along in Thunderbird 1, finds the boy, but someone's already saved him. His own brother, and it turns out the kids are just playing a game of international rescue.
In a way, I think this is kind of a sci-fi telling of, or PSA to tell kids not to phone up the emergency services when they don't need help, or not to like pull a prank on them, because we've got all these tons and tons of stories of not just children but also grown adults calling out the emergency services whenever there's no problem at all. I remember someone once phoning up an ambulance because they were lonely and they just wanted someone to talk to. Or there was another time, I think some guy ran out of toilet paper in America and he phoned up 911.
There was that fat woman who called the police on McDonald's because they ran out of chicken nuggets.
Oh God. So many stories. You just look these up on the internet and we'll find as many. There's plenty of them on YouTube or on Snopes or wherever you want to go. But this is what happens in the future if two kids, start playing around with trying to be the very best like no one ever was, and...
Not Pokemon! What? Not Pokemon!
Oh, come on.
We swore a sacred vow not to do Pokemon while we did these vlogs.
We had to do it at some point or another. It's to do with our psyche. But anyway, these guys are trying to be international rescue, and the irony is that because international rescue can hear in upon anyone... I just realised, wouldn't that give Thunderbird 5 some kind of Big Brother vibe? But anyway, they listen in on them, and so John obviously thinks that they're in real trouble and mortal peril, so he sends Scott off to find them, only to find it's just a game.
Yeah, and so Scott sits the kids down with his father and says, "Look, you can't be meddling with this shit, because someone might have actually needed that call and could have died while we were out fucking around with you two kids." So, oddly enough, despite International Rescue's efforts to keep their organisation a top secret, Scott decides to bring the kids along to the base to give them a tour in the hope that the kids will learn their lesson. So he blindfolds them and takes them straight to Tracy Island, gives them a grand tour of the place. Grandma Tracy and Tintin fill them up with all kinds of sweets and licorice all sorts and the like. And the kids have a blast there, and they send them back home, hopefully a lot wiser, and the kids promise, "We won't do it again, we won't do it again."
They're teaching them just if you do something like that, you could actually be putting other people in mortal risk. Because as Scott says, someone could have died because we weren't able to save them. So this is actually, International Rescue getting quite serious here about how sinister or how serious the things they deal with. So it's a great way of teaching kids, just always, be wise and don't try and take things for granted.
And leading on from this, we come into kind of the main bulk of the story after that main setup. The Hood returns, and he's targeting specifically the boy's father, Mr. Williams, because Mr. Williams is in charge of, I imagine, tracking this satellite and getting very important photographs of, I can't remember if it's the Earth or the Moon, but he has these very vital and very significant photographs, and the Hood tries to get his hands on them, and to get the boys out of the way, he traps them down a mine while he goes to get the photographs from Mr. Williams. Now, obviously, the kids phone up International Rescue, begging for help because they're stuck down this mine with the roof about to collapse on top of them, but, International Rescue, having caught on to the fact that it is these two kids, like, hang on, we told you not to phone us up anymore, and they think that the kids are just running away with their imaginations again, and once again lying, not realising that they are in fact in mortal peril.
And so eventually Williams does call International Rescue himself, because the Hood, who has come in to try and steal these plans for whatever it is that he's working for the government, he is actually trying to break in and steal the plans. So International Rescue, being the fastest organisation to get out there so quickly into the middle of nowhere, they're probably the best people to deal with, and we actually see them pursuing the Hood once again, and so Scott actually takes part in the rescue physically this time. He's got his hover bike. It's nice to see the hover bikes again, and we see again that the Hood is this horrible, evil, misanthropic son of a bitch who has put two boys in mortal peril. He's pretty much a child killer.
Yeah, it's pretty low, obviously he's tried in the past to get the gold and...
put 600 people in mortal peril on the Fire Flash.
But killing children, that's an all-time low for the Hood.
But the thing is, no matter how evil he is, and just how much of a real right arse he can be, and just how low he can sink... you just can't drive a bloody car.
He just can't do it. He can't.
I mean, this is like no ordinary car, like we saw in Edge of Impact. This is like one of these futuristic things that Jerry Anderson has dreamt up himself. It's quite similar to one of the cars in Desperate Intruder, where the guys were... the Uninvited, where they were traversing across the desert. And Scott's sending him literally over a cliff, just like Desperate Intruder, and bang!
Yeah, I think the only vehicle the Hood has proven that he can drive is his submarine, but even that gets like blown up, doesn't it?
Yeah, blown up by Gordon.
He should just stay away from vehicles because they're obviously always bad luck for him.
I mean, he's mastered hypnosis. Why doesn't he try hypnotising a better driver into doing the work for him? I mean, imagine if he hypnotised Parker, for instance. For him to chauffeur him around, perhaps. It's like, yes, my lord. Yes, my lord.
Well, right. Why doesn't he hypnotise a driving instructor to teach him how to drive a fucking car properly?
Oh, God.
I just find it remarkable how in a show so abundant with all kinds of like colourful vehicles and cars and planes and trains and whatnot, the Hood can't drive any one of them or operate any one of them properly.
Because the vehicles are quite fascinating in this one, because you see Alan taking the boys on a tour around Tracy Island. He's shown where everything is kept before they get put into Thunderbird 2 to go out on the rescues. And so I guess they couldn't have used, say, the mole when they were rescuing the kids in the mine shaft, because, that would easily make the mine collapse, as we probably saw in A Bit of Peril.
Yeah, and going back to Alan Tracy giving them the tour of Tracy Island, there's a nice echo of an episode to come, which is Security Hazard, where a kid, another kid comes to Tracy Island and, gets shown around all the craft and stuff. It's a clip show episode, but it's a very, it's a very interesting one. But there's a bit of an echo to that when you see Alan showing the kids around Thunderbird 3 and he can't help but say, oh yeah, this is the most impressive craft and it's the one I fly.
Yeah, so this was a very interesting story, looking at how, easily things can get mixed up when dealing with the emergency services. But I can't but help thinking now, because John can so easily listen into some kids playing with walkie-talkies, he must be able to listen into absolutely everything. How do we know that John, being up there all alone in Thunderbird 5, how do we know he's not spending late nights listening in on other people's phone conversations? Perhaps, how else does he get his kicks? I mean, he obviously hasn't got a girlfriend or anything, so how do we know he's not listening into someone making a dirty phone call? I mean, the guy must be a real pervert. God, John.
John might have some kind of god complex where he's like listening to every single radio and he's just like, I am omniscient. I am John Tracy.
Because there's some real Big Brother hints in this episode, not just with John listening in on the phone conversation, but also when the Hood is right up on the the monitor hypnotising Williams. You just see just his face, so I just couldn't help thinking of 1984.
Yeah, big close up on the face with the eye, like, open the door, Williams.
Yes, it's just a very mad, 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 mad world.
But I particularly liked, it was quite cutesy seeing like the kids. They've set up the little international rescue headquarters in their bedroom. The sign spelt wrong with like an SH and something like that. They got this little toy car that they drive that's painted to look like Thunderbird 2. They even got the little sachets on. So the attention to detail is quite good, considering that the International Rescue Organisation keep themselves very secretive. And like, how would they know that they do wear the sachets and the Thunderbird, the colour of Thunderbird 2 and stuff? So I assumed that it was probably, influenced from the imposters, like when they, disguised as the International Rescue Team.
And they allowed themselves to be photographed. But there's also this very funny scene at the very end where Scott tries out their latest invention, the emergency exit hatch, and I just wondered, did they steal that straight from when, you know, they were visiting Tracy Island and Virgil took them home in Thunderbird 2?
Perhaps so. Maybe the visit gave them some new ideas to add to their game. Like, you know, maybe they'll build a little cardboard Thunderbird 3 now and
Fly to the moon.
Try and fly to the moon.
Yes, and I guess maybe they'll take up astronomy or something, and Alan could teach them a thing or two about space travel. But I guess we could see that maybe Scott wasn't a very good driver of kids' cars, I guess, so maybe he's not alone.
The things I do for international rescue.
Oh, talking to the Hood. Imagine how pissed off the Hood would be if the kids actually did make a Thunderbird 3 that could go up into space and be like, I've been trying to replicate the international rescue plans for years! How does a kid make it in less than a fucking afternoon?
Oh god, he just needs to go back to the drawing board, and I guess, maybe because it would make international news being about international rescue. Does the Hood read Australian newspapers? Because you see him reading the newspaper, and it's like, you know, he's probably out in, say, Malaysia or Brunei or somewhere in his hidden base, and he's reading an Australian newspaper. How could he relate to Australia?
Yeah. What? Australian zoo is closing? No. Maybe he loves Australia. Maybe never know. He could have been born in Australia and raised in Malaysia or wherever he's from.
Yeah, he probably just spends his days plotting to kill international rescue whilst getting drunk on Fosters.
Good call.
And maybe he was descended from maybe, you know, criminals or convicts who were sent to Australia perhaps, and he probably escaped to Malaysia.
Piece of history there for you kids. Any kids watching? I don't think there are any kids watching, but
yeah, and I guess any Australian watching this will probably, you know, confirm that for us. We're not being offensive.
Oh no, not like. I just remember the Mighty Atom when we were talking.
Oh, yes.
Another Australian episode from the mighty land down under.
Yes, you know, the men at work. There are so many men at work down under. That's the ladies' new wave hint there.
Right. So anyway, that was Cry Wolf. Probably the most PSA-esque, you know, moralistic episode of Thunderbirds there is. You know, teaching children don't lie, don't make up stories, and, you know, don't phone the emergency services unless you absolutely need them.
It's that one episode that would have been shown in schools.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, you know, if I wasn't lucky enough to be shown Thunderbirds while I was in school, my school days weren't that exciting. But I imagine if a Thunderbirds episode was shown, it would be this one.
Yep, it certainly would be. So it'd be a lesson to a lot of your kids. Don't phone the emergency services.
Don't phone the emergency services.
Alright, well I guess we'll see you next time for whichever episode comes up next.
Yeah, actually, I think I know which one it is. It's the only episode in the entire series that features John in a rescue.
Ah, John. Finally, he might do something for old John.
Poor, misguided, neglected John.
Ah, John.
Well, maybe he'll catch a break this episode. So
Let's hope so.
FAB.
FAB.